So the modest lifestyle standard actually corresponds quite closely to the age pension. I think you need to remember a couple of things about these ASFA standards. They are assuming that you own your own house, and this is a post-tax income. So don't think of this as a pre-tax income, think of this as a post-tax income, and one where by definition you've kind of already done your saving. So this is the money that you're planning to spend.
Nicole, would you like to tackle that question?
Yeah, well, I've got what they are paying out of it. There's a bit of a list here from ASFA. So household goods, private health insurance, a reasonable car, good clothes, a range of electronic equipment, and domestic and occasionally international holiday travel. I like to kind of apply the Tipple test to this one as well. So basically, the way ASFA puts it, if you're on a comfortable level, so you've got that 60 grand, let's round up, you've got that 60 grand, then you can afford bottled wine. If you're on a modest retirement, right, which is slightly more than the age pension, then you're at cask wine. If you're on the pension, then you're on homebrew. Very nice, sir, very nice. Homebrew or maybe nothing at all. So perhaps that kind of takes it down to a relatable level. But I guess to add to what John was saying earlier on, and for another reassuring point, that comfortable level, you know, if that comfortable level is higher than perhaps you're even used to now, the lump sum that ASFA says creates that is $640,000 for a couple. Now that
how do they get that?
That is
outside of the home.
Well, this is all debatable. This is all a moot point, but it's a lot less than the $1 million that's thrown around so often. And part of the reason for that is that it assumes drawdown of all the funds. Also, the income that's generated from your retirement funds is often ignored in the calculations. About 60% of your retirement income, your retirement funding, should come from the income that you earn post-retirement. So there's a lot of factors in there that make that number smaller than perhaps, you know, the scary number that people hear often. Now, of course, Australians only have roughly half of that on average, so we're still not quite there. In super, that's right. And don't forget that super's only been around for 25 years. So anyone retiring today doesn't have a lifetime of super like many people in the room will have. So there's a few other considerations. I'm on a bit of a mission to try and get our graduates money smart, because they could still, although there's tremendous work being done by Paul Clitheroe and the Financial Literacy Board, they could still weave their way through school and actually come out with no financial literacy education at all. So I go into schools and I give them an all singing, all dancing like introduction to, you know, just how much damage they could do versus how much, you know, how wealthy they could be just by saving, say, $6 a day. They'd be a millionaire by 60, you know. So what I've observed, though, is they're talking about house prices. There is a total despondency about probably all the attention given to it and all the talk about it, where a lot of them are totally disengaging and just almost that impotency of, I'm not even going to try because I can't succeed. And I think, to link that right back, I think that's where this $1 million figure in super kind of falls down as well, because it's, if it is the industry trying to ramp up and get our contributions and get our fees, it's kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because it's actually making people go, oh, I'm never going to have that, I'm just going to have to try another way.
But we can show them how to get it.
Absolutely.
If you've got someone young and you can still get them $1 million, it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got, I mean, time is the most valuable asset.
Absolutely, it's time.
Yeah,
it's all about time.
And Nicole, I seem to remember you have an interesting 3 buckets approach to retirement financial planning.
Do you want to talk about your 3 buckets?
Yeah,
first?
all right. Well, there's a couple of different elements there. So I guess ASFA wants us to believe that there's 2 different phases. And it is an important thing to acknowledge that you will spend a different amount of money, like it's not set in stone, this comfortable versus modest. It's going to vary dependent on how you are and your age. So ASFA wants us to think there's 2, right? There's a 65-year-old one and there's an 85-year-old one. Obviously, there's going to be a lot in the middle of that. There's another productivity commission named 3 stages. So that's active, passive. So active when you've retired, you're going, woohoo, let's buy the boat, let's go overseas, let's travel, let's blow some money that I've been saving and trading off this whole time. And then you kind of get over that bit, you slow down a little, you're probably happier, a bit more content to stick around home. So your income requirements actually fall. And then you get to the, no way of sugarcoating it, the frail stage, where your income requirements might actually tick back up again, because although you're not spending all this money anymore, your health costs might perhaps tick up. So there's those kind of 3 phases.
Yeah, well, I think the evidence is that actually very few people spend more money in that 3rd phase, because one, you're not in a fit state to spend anything much apart from health.
And you can't drink much anymore.
And the
No,
reality,
the tipple doesn't matter.
You
and the
can't
reality
drink,
is
that's
that
the trouble.
the reality is the government pays for most of the health.
Thank you.
Right.
It's a question for Nicole. You gave a golden figure for couples. What about singles for superannuation,
Yeah,
please?
I didn't get to that. It was thank you. It was $545,000. So if you remember the couple's figure, it was $640,000. So if ever there was a bid to stay married, if that's a consideration,
Or to get married.
then yeah, $545,000 for singles to get that comfortable retirement.
But I think it's very, very important. You often see a couple on the pension, they leave their assets to each other, one of them dies, then the other one's over the threshold and loss of spouse and loss of pension. It's a major problem.
So what do they do?
Well, it's too late. I mean, they leave it, say they've got $800,000 and they're on a part pension, then one of them dies.
So
and
give
the
it to their kids.
Oh, what do they do? Well, talk about it, sure. A basic element is the more money you can earn on your portfolio, the longer your money's going to last. And if you're accumulating it, the less you've got to put away. And that's where education comes in.
Certainly into the financial systems inquiry, like actuaries like Rice Warner were very, very strong on the fact that actually we do need to be invested in growth assets right up to a ripe old age by segmenting your portfolio so there's more liquidity among what you need for now and the immediate term, so you don't have to sell down those assets in dips, but to keep a portion, whatever that may be, for your own risk profile.
Sure.
In those growth assets and perhaps those income generating shares as well, so that you've got that potential for growth. Because otherwise it's not just longevity risk, it's inflation risk. I'd like to share two short anecdotes in response to that question. First of all, happened last week. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they woke us up in the pitch black at the crack of dawn, as they do. And I heard this little conversation that they were having between themselves, and it was so hilarious. My little 4-year-old is going to my 7-year-old son, my girl to my boy, is going, I'm going to keep all this money and I'm going to keep it forever and I'm going to be so rich and I'm going to have so much money. She's 4. And I'm thinking, oh, I've gone wrong. I've gone wrong. I know, it's me, it's my fault. And then my son chimes in, my 7-year-old, and he goes, no, Darcy, it's not about being rich. It's about getting the things that money can buy you that make you happy. It's like, that's my boy. Ooh. And my husband's there elbowing me, going, oh, it's like he scripted it. All this is happening in the dark. The other anecdote I want to share with you is a random man once told me a really interesting kind of resonant thing about happiness. And he'd spent a lot of time on his own in mining sites and he hadn't found his sort of perfect person yet. So he kind of thought about this issue of happiness and this concept quite a lot. And he said to me that he thinks to be happy, there are 3 elements that you need. One was someone to love, another was something to do, and the third was something to look forward to. So I've gone really deep right at the outset here. But I think those are really key elements when you're talking about a very life-changing overhaul of who you are in your existence, particularly those something to do and something to look forward to. We're all on the treadmill of career, kids, probably credit right now, and that's all consuming, and all we want to do is stop. But a full stop can be a really challenging thing. So I think there needs to be probably equal attention given to the non-financial aspects of retirement as to the financial that we all dwell on so much.
Work seems to be much more fluid now with, entrepreneurship, small businesses, nimble. I've had my own business for a long time. I'm wondering how you relate this notion of retirement to the future of work and the changing notion and nature of work. I don't think we'll stop and just go home one day and get on a cruise. So how does that sit with you? What do we need to think about?
This is where we were talking about at the beginning, with Noel saying you needed a purpose and Nicole saying don't have a full stop. Your purpose might be continuing to work part-time in your field, or having a second career, or volunteering, it can be many things, but perhaps you guys would like to elaborate on that some more.
Well, there's a study in the US out of a university in Michigan that they analysed, did a meta-analysis of 37 other studies on retirement, and they found that people who actively volunteered, were 40% more likely to be alive at the end of those studies. So that's one good reason to do it, of course. Look, I think the changes that the future generations are going to have in terms of this idea that you have a work phase and a stop phase, it's not going to be a reality. And we're seeing so much of this coming through already with the fact that there is no separation between work and home. With smartphones, everything is infiltrating everything else. So as a society, this is another one of our massive challenges. And we are moving to this massive casualisation. I forget the figures, it's something like 130,000 more.
No, you know the figures?
Yeah.
Casualisation rates?
Yep, tell me.
Exactly where they were in 2001.
Are they?
Really?
Exactly.
There you go.
Okay.
In fact, more or less exactly where they were in 1990.
And
Really?
part-time?
Part-time has gone up a lot
Okay.
amongst both men and women.
Contract workers, how about them?
No, it hasn't. Well, contract work has gone up a little bit, but the overall number of people in inverted commas permanent employment hasn't materially changed.
I wrote a piece for you recently on retiring right, Caitlin, and you wanted me, this is a very strange brief for me because Caitlin said, I want you to write all the stuff that's not money, which of course is what I write is money, basically. But I do have a psychology degree and I've studied this a lot, and it was an interesting piece to write. And as one of the elements of that, it was all about what you do that fulfills you beyond retirement, how you plan for that sort of transitioning, that volunteering, that amping up your social life, all the things that fulfil that life, things to do, something to look forward to. And one of the things that I talked about was when the chance is taken away, the choice is taken away from you. And I talked about Beyond Blue and the increase that they have documented in anxiety and depression when that choice is taken away from you, and the resources that are fabulous that they have available, just to note that. And also this thing called career planning, which National Seniors Australia has done quite a lot of documentation around. And it's really just a formalised way of trying to stay one step ahead. Anyway, a lady read this and she was very, very upset with this idea that there was this career planning and you could stay ahead of redundancy and predict things, and that wasn't really what it is at all. But she was 62 and she'd just lost a job that she'd had for 20 years, and she was obviously devastated, and she didn't see that she had a way of resuming her career and her income. So that was, obviously a very personal, deep, raw situation for her. And I assured her that I'd been through it, my father-in-law's been through it, my husband's been through it. It wasn't at all intended to be aimed at her. But this whole idea of career planning is really interesting because it's almost like not identifying yourself through that particular occupation, but always looking to the next thing, the next skill, trying to be really trying to assess very honestly and candidly your own position and your own kind of stability in that job, the stability of the industry, and just keeping very self-aware about everything around you and going, okay, am I secure? Are my skills up to scratch? Is my employer actually pretty dodgy? Should I start looking around? And just always trying to stay that one step ahead. And to be honest, in this kind of economic environment, when we have the pace of evolution that we have right now and technological change, it's all that we can do, because otherwise this is going to be totally taken out of our hands at some point.
Can I just add something?
Absolutely.
I'm always getting questions like, what's going to happen in America with Trump? Where's gold going? What's oil doing? And no one knows these answers. But I've always said, if you take care of the things which you can control, the rest will tend to work out. And that means you're living beyond your means, living within your means. I've got the faux pas today.
Freudian slips tonight, Noel.
This is some kind of doppelganger of Noel Whittaker.
Thanks, Nicole. You are living within your means. You're, as you said, keeping skills up to date. You've got the right asset mix. If you start to work on those things, on the balance of probabilities, life should work out for you.
One of my observations has been that a number of people, when they reach retirement, and often they're men, discover that their lives are no bigger than their roles. and that can lead to all sorts of stuff, including depression. Any thoughts on how to avoid doing that?
Yeah, well, this is a lot of what Caitlin got me to write about recently. And there's lots of ways. I think you do need to prepare for retirement in a lot of non-financial ways, as well as we're so focused on the super and the assets outside of super. But it's so important to, I guess, probably through your whole life, not think of yourself as a label. Did you say it was John? Paul, sorry. You know, Paul the plumber, Paul the lawyer. You think of yourself in other ways as that, because otherwise when you all of a sudden overnight lose that label, then you might not feel like you have a place anymore. And it's those feelings of, you know, irrelevance or worthlessness that so often, you know, the research shows, and the Beyond Blue research that I was alluding to, can create anxiety and depression, and particularly if those choices, that option is taken away from you. So it's a premature retirement kind of situation. Transitioning to work is fantastic, and there's so many, you know, people who stay on now as trainers, as consultants. I talked about volunteering and even the health benefits of volunteering. If all of a sudden you have all this time on your hands that you didn't have, imagine how great it would feel to give that to someone, you know, working in hospitals, driving around veterans, you know, working with disabled kids.
Whatever. Mentor system's good.
What's that, sorry?
Being a mentor is very good.
Being a mentor, yeah, absolutely. And there's, I think it's Volunteer Victoria. I mean, they're crying out for people to help. You can go back and study. You can completely reinvent yourself for no other purpose than your own edification and stimulation, you know. And the other thing I would say we didn't get to before is, in retirement, you need to, way before retirement, you need to set up your social network. So you need to be, even though you're tired and you're full and life's crazy, you need to be actually ramping up your social events as you head towards retirement. So you've got your little posse of mates around you and that really strong support network. It's a bit tricky because not everyone's going to retire at the same point. Not everyone's going to stop and be there for you on like a Monday, Tuesday, what have you. But Forbes magazine picked this random number of minimum social events to be happy, this happiness concept again. And it picked 4. Now, 4 social events a month, 4 social events a month don't even keep me happy now. I need at least double that amount. And I'm thinking if you're retired and you actually don't have a structured week as such, you probably need more like 4 times that amount. And in their study, I think it was 3 out of 5 Americans don't have that level of socialising yet. And it doesn't have to be actual socialising nowadays. It can be virtual socialising. Because this is another, I alluded to the fact that, you know, I'm now regional, I've gone, you know, away from the big smoke and whatever. And honestly, the social networks through Facebook and Twitter and made me feel so much less isolated because I was plugged into absolutely everything. And maybe even that's a course you do in social media when you retire, you know. My father-in-law has been doing a course in sewing. And it's amazing. He's making these incredible creations that just like blow your mind for his grandchildren. Of course, he's making this real connection, and there's all sorts. You know, life's so much more than what you do.
It's very dangerous to retire elsewhere, because as Nicole said, your social network is vital.
It's like moving, yeah.
Yeah, and it can be very dangerous to go elsewhere and lose all your social network.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Nice audience.